I want to take you back to 2006. In July of 2006, I walked through the doors of the Center of Peace at 4700 Wissahickon Avenue. And by September, I was in foundations class with Reverend Sheila. And I think it was about the sixth week, and we were talking about inclusivity, the fifth core. And we were trying to understand how everything is included in the one. Because all of my years I had been taught that there are places that God is not. And to know that all of that is included in the one. And as we discussed that, Reverend Sheila said something along the lines of, "You are always at choice. You are free to choose." I had never heard that before. No one told me that before. I always heard, "Oh, that's just the way she is. Oh, that's the way he is." So I figured, that's the way I am. And then all of a sudden, Reverend Sheila was telling me, no, you are as you are because you choose to be. And if you want a different life, if you want different things to happen around you, make another choice. So that was a life-changing revelation for me. One Sunday morning, in one of Reverend Sheila's messages, and I often told her, when you are speaking to me, and we just allow others to listen in. And this particular morning, her message was something like, life is a laboratory. Experiment with it. Be brave enough to experiment with it. You know the spiritual principles. Experiment with them and see what happens. Now that was years ago. And last Sunday I sat back holding consciousness, and Edwin Gaines said, try for the next 21 days not to complain about anything. And I heard that voice say, experiment with it. So, since last Sunday, and I'm going to let you know in 21 days what has taken place. But she gave me that courage to say, experiment with it. Another thing, somewhere along in my younger life, and I don't know exactly why, but I became very protective of myself. I didn't share myself. I didn't allow anyone to get but so close. I didn't allow anyone to know me, really know me. But in talking to Reverend Sheila, and I spent over 200 hours over the 4 years in classes with her, and then we had conferences with her every year when I became a practitioner. And we shared lunch together a couple of times. But as I watched her, I realized that I could trust her. I could love her and I could trust her. And through the years, I've looked for rejection, and I could see it in the eyes. I could see it, the smirk on the side of the mouth. I could see it in the twitch of a nose. I was an expert at looking for rejection. But you know, I never saw it in Reverend Sheila. All I saw was love. And she never said the words, "You can trust me." But I knew I could trust her. And when she made her transition, Reverend Sheila knew more about me than anybody on this planet. She knew. I trusted her. I opened myself up, and all I saw was love. So these are just 3 of the many gifts that Reverend Sheila gave to me that keep on giving over and over and over. And so it is.
Yummy. Thank you, Bailus. Thank you. And so our next guest speaker is someone I invited because I knew of her relationship with Reverend Sheila and the special moments and times that they got to share together. And I think it would be very appropriate, and we all love her too. You know, in many ways, I'm very clear that I'm not Reverend Sheila. You know, I don't. Someone once described Reverend Sheila as, when you see her, you just want to go and jump in her bust, right? I'm not that. And I know it. But what I realize is there are a lot of more people here. And in Reverend Sheila's transition, she knew that we would have all that we needed. And I feel like the next person is someone who just fits right into those shoes very well, and that we all want to just jump in her bus. Gerri Walker.
That was interesting. If you jump into my bus, you're using your imagination. Okay, I've been crying the whole time, so in addition to allergies, my eyes keep weeping. I'm not quite sure which are tears and which are allergies. So Reverend Twana said memories of Reverend Sheila. Because Reverend Sheila had a special place, not just in my heart, but in my family's heart. I asked my husband, I asked my daughter, and I asked my mother. So I asked Reggie what was his fondest memory of Reverend Sheila. And he said when he took her out to lunch at the Chestnut Hill Grill many times. And they talked about things spiritual and personal. And that was all he said. And then this morning he tried to give me 15 million more things. And so the thing that I pulled out from him was that they talked a lot about how to support people in understanding that they are the divine. That although we say the divine is within us and around us, that their conversations really focused on claiming the divinity that each of us is. So if you can imagine Reggie talking and Reverend Sheila talking, so that was a really deep conversation. So then I asked Rana, and she said, the day I went to the doctor with Reverend Sheila and she was told she was cancer-free, And then we went to the kitchen bar to celebrate. We talked about her many reincarnations, and many of you heard Reverend Sheila's story about looking into the mirror and seeing the Aboriginal face, talking about her visit to China and feeling the piercing, and then coming back to, and the walk that she went on in Australia, and then looking at her name, Sheila Walker Pierce, and how that was like, wow. And they also talked about the stories, those stories that she wanted to share with the Center of Peace, but she didn't want you guys to think she was weird. And Rhonda said, I assured her that everyone loved her and that by sharing her story, she would give others permission to do the same, no matter what it sounded like. The second thing she said was, we would have our relationship talks, and I could talk to her in a very honest and intimate way, letting it all hang out. We would laugh, and her face would crinkle up, and then she would look into my eyes and let me know she saw me and that she loved me unconditionally, which sounds like the theme of the day, unconditional love. My mother remembered the many Christmases that she and sometimes Elise spent with us, and sometimes Thanksgiving dinners, and Reverend Sheila would always bring a straw basket filled with her rolls and covered with a checkered cloth napkin. Inevitably, everybody would be too full to eat the rolls, but we would save them throughout the year, put them in the freezer, and make sure that we had them. And what was special, we joined as a family. Reggie thought of Reverend Sheila's brother Royce as his elder brother, and Reverend Sheila was his little sister. And because her maiden name was Walker, she claimed us as family. We were her East Coast clan, and we embraced her as such. She encouraged me and Rana in our company, Diamond Cutter, and she was really one of our first clients. And we loved her for that because she just jumped right into it like she does everything. She says, oh, you can do that? I need that. All right, I'll pay you. We were like, wonderful. For me personally, she was a mirror for me. She was always reflecting me to myself. That's a gift you cannot get anywhere. And whenever I said something, she would just give it right back to me and then look at me quizzically. Is that the truth? And she would make me explore it. She'd make me look at it even after I left her presence. She made me believe I could do anything. Only my father, Reggie, Rana, and my son Chaka, and they could say stuff, and you kind of hear it and you don't hear it. It's like, yeah, you're wonderful. Yeah, I know. You think that because I'm your mom or I'm your wife. But when she said it was like she was speaking to my soul. And she said outrageous things. Well, Gerri, you should write a New Thought novel. I think that would be really good. You should run for a seat on the city council. I think you'd be really good at that. And maybe you could be on the CSL board. You have come here to do so much, and you have no idea how big God's idea is for you. And I've come to believe it more and more. Not quite where she was or is, but as Reverend Twana has said, she is the leader of my spiritual posse. And I know that she is always, I would like to say tapping on my shoulder, banging on my shoulder. So I was board president for 6 years here. And we talked a lot about the vision that she had for the Center of Peace and this congregation. Her idea was and is a big one. Just like she visioned for practitioners, I think we have 20 now, remote practitioners. We have a mass choir That first vision came from Carletta. She was always visioning for how big, how good, how broad, how God's idea could move through us easily and effortlessly, that we didn't have to struggle with it if we just relaxed into it. And I knew she was always visioning to have someone follow in her footsteps. She knew she was not going to be here forever, and she knew the Center of Peace was too big to fall. One of our practitioners started on that path but had to stop due to family illness. But guess what? Reverend Twana took it up. She started on that path. And I know that that was not a path that she had been thinking about. She didn't have to. It was God's idea, Reverend Sheila's idea. And her concept, Reverend Sheila's concept, was always shared leadership. And I think that's so important to make sure that we understand that. That's why she was so excited and is so excited about the meta model. Shared leadership. She was always saying, don't look at me. Don't depend on me. You guys know what to do. And guess what? We found out we know what to do. And I think someone said it before me, that she was ready. She made the decision to move on so that we could grow up and accept responsibility and do what we know how to do. She was my scandal buddy. Every week, almost every commercial, she would call me or I would call her, and we'd be like, girl, did you see that? Do you believe Olivia did that? And through our frequent conversations face-to-face on the telephone, she'd call and say, I just have one quick question. I'm sure some of you have experienced this, and we'd be on the phone for like 2 hours. I said, Reverend Sheila, I got to go. She could talk. But in our conversations, as long and as deep as they were, I got to know her as Sheila. I got to know her as a mother, as a wife, even as a child, as a professional woman. And we talked about our loves, we talked about our hurts, but she was never bitter. I'm not saying she didn't get angry. But when she got angry, then she got annoyed with herself for being angry. And she would move right back into that space of alignment and say, what is this I've created for myself? And that was a gift to me, to remember to ask that when things start getting kind of, it's like, okay, wait a minute, that didn't come out of nowhere. You had a part in it. What is it in that? Why did I create that for myself? She never tried to be perfect, but she did want to model being the center of peace. And she always wanted to be in integrity. She was always questioning that. And she always wanted the center to be in integrity. She had a practitioner. And that's why she asked every practitioner here to have a practitioner. And she asked every one of our congregants to have a practitioner. Because if we're evolving, lots of times, most of the time, we need someone to be that reflection, to listen, to allow us to be vulnerable, and to allow us to be trusting. The gift of love we've all talked about. Every time we parted, we would hug, and she would say, I love you. And the way she said it, I knew it was true. It was the kind of thing that kind of just melts you. And it was perfunctory. We'd be at the door, just kind of like, and she'd hug, and then I would like, oh God, you do. Felt really, really good. The memory that touched me the most when I knew that she was my ride or die. Reggie, Rana, and I were in New York for a funeral of the father of a friend. And a mutual friend, not a mutual, a friend of mine who lived in her building called and said, Gerri, your mother's been in a car accident. And she explained, I said, well, you know, is she hurt? She said, well, I think they took her to the hospital. I said, I'm in New York. I can't get there. So she said, well, I just wanted you to know. So I said,